Welcome back to the show today. We're talking about how the NCAA is now competing with the NBA. Personally, I've always enjoyed NBA basketball over college basketball. Honestly, I think it's because the college players are so much younger than me. I always feel like there's a certain level of adoration when it comes to professional athletes. I used to own Tracy McGrady's shoes. I used to have Kobe Bryant's poster on my wall when I was a kid. I wanted to grow up to be like them, but I've obviously had to reconsider that, considering that 95% of the NBA is now younger than me. I'm just a middle-aged man watching young men play basketball. Now I have to decide whether I want to watch really young men play basketball or watch slightly less young men play basketball for significantly more money. So one thing I know about a lot of college basketball fans is that they prefer watching college basketball over pro basketball because the players have more heart. They're playing with passion. They're playing for the love of the game and their teammates. Because the NCAA had rules that the players couldn't get paid or receive any endorsement money. They even had caps on the amount of scholarship money that they could actually receive. Christian Laettner's buzzer beater over Kentucky in the Elite Eight, the Fab Five, the 1979 championship with Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. All these things happened with no legitimate money exchange. Legitimate money. All these players were just there because they loved basketball and they loved to compete. And there definitely was a purity and innocence to it. At the same time, the NCAA was taking advantage of the fact that the players couldn't get paid. Any revenue that was generated by the competitive basketball went directly to them and not the players. Until 2021, when the NCAA started allowing name, image, likeness deals. Basically, they could get paid to do endorsements or anything else. So from a pro-labor perspective, this was a big deal. So was the transfer portal. Students didn't have to stay in one spot or have limitations of where they could go if they didn't want to stay at a college. If they weren't happy or they weren't getting enough minutes in one particular program, or maybe another program offered them more money, they could just switch up. Take a player like Hunter Dickinson. He was playing at Michigan and he was playing really well. He heard from other players who were less talented than him that they were making way more money than he was at Michigan. So before his senior year of college, he played 3 years at Michigan, he entered the transfer portal. I don't think in the old system any player would have ever done this. They just would have stuck around in Michigan. That was their team. Those were their boys. That was the family. But from a business standpoint, it makes sense for him to transfer. He was making less than $100,000 at Michigan and projected to earn over $1 million if he transferred to a school like Kansas, where he did transfer. Now Dickinson is playing his 5th year in college because he got an extra year of eligibility, which makes sense. Stay in college as long as possible. You're never going to make that much money in any other career besides basketball. So NCAA D1 basketball is dead in its purest form. It's now professional basketball. These are not kids anymore. These are full-grown adults making money. Actually, they're not even adults, really. They're sort of corporations unto themselves. They've got teams of people all around them making money off of their production. The NCAA is just the NBA, but the players have to go to class sometimes. So let's compare how much the average NBA player makes to the average NCAA player. According to the NCAA, the average D1 men's basketball player makes $59K a year. Then obviously you can factor in the free education, the room and board, laptops, all that free stuff. Also, since we're talking about an entertainment standpoint, let's just talk about the players that are on TV, the teams that are in the tournament, okay? Let's assume that the lowest of the top tier guys get $100K a year. I think that's fair. I'm sure there are a lot of less lucrative D1 programs that bring that average down. These are the best of the best, right? I'm also factoring in the fact that a team like Kansas is paying their players on average $400,000 a year. And a guy like Cooper Flagg or Dylan Harper is looking at $3 million a year in NIL deals. Top NCAA players are making really good money. But is it even close to what they'd be making in the NBA? Well, in most cases, no. But in some cases, the NCAA players make more than NBA players. Let's take a look at NBA rookie scale contracts. I think we're pretty confident that Cooper Flagg is going to be the #1 pick, right? So next year, he'll be making $12 million on his rookie scale contract. Hypothetically, let's say he says, I don't want to go to the NBA. I want to be a Dookie. I want to run it back with this same team. Based on his current NIL valuation, I would assume next year he would make a $4.2 million in that case. But he's not going to do that. He's going to go to the NBA so he can triple his earnings. Speculating $4.2 million versus $12 million. Plus he gets to keep all of his endorsements when he goes to the NBA. He's not leaving any money on the table by going to the NBA. Same thing for a guy like Ace Bailey or VJ Edgecombe. They're going to quintuple their earnings when they're an NBA rookie. These guys are ready to get to the NBA and they're ready to get their money. But here's where it gets interesting. Let's talk about college players that aren't good enough to be in the first round of the NBA draft. Let's take a player like Maxime Raynaud. Maxime is a senior at Stanford right now. He's a 7'1" forward who's pretty skilled. In years past, Maxime would have taken his chances. He would have entered the NBA draft a few years ago, probably. Maybe as a sophomore or junior. So he could actually use those basketball skills to make real money. He probably would have done well. He probably would have gone in the second round, maybe been undrafted, maybe played in the G League a bit, probably a two-way contract, I'm thinking. But now with NIL deals, he's at Stanford making $1.8 million. That is way more money than he would have made if he'd started his NBA career a few years ago. So Maxime has milked his college career all he can. He's a senior. He has no more years of eligibility. So now he'll probably enter the NBA draft. He's projected to go in the second round, where he'll end up making $1 million to $2 million, but he might even get cut. He might not even make a team. Best case scenario, he's taking an $800,000 pay cut from what he was making when he was at Stanford. So what does this mean for the NBA? It means we're gonna start seeing way more college seniors in the second round of the draft. Every player that is confident that they're gonna go in the first round is going to enter the draft whenever they want, because those first round picks are going to make way more money than they would have made in college with their rookie scale contract. But second rounders don't get those rookie scale contracts. They're usually getting league minimum pay. And again, they might not even get that. They might have to play in the G League, where the average salary is basically around what you and I make. Imagine being really good at basketball and then having to live like us. Yikes. So college students now have way more financial incentive to just stay in college and not enter the NBA draft. They can get paid more and then also get an education to pursue a career in something other than basketball when they're done with it. So why did the NCAA start allowing players to have name, image, likeness deals? Well, like how most legislation gets passed, somebody gets sued. Sean Alston, a West Virginia football player, along with a bunch of other athletes, sued the NCAA for violating antitrust laws. They were saying by limiting the compensation an athlete could have via scholarship, they were not creating a competitive environment. I guess the NCAA was limiting how many different perks you could give a college player. Books, laptops, meals, I don't know, other stuff. The NCAA tried to defend itself by saying the limitations are there to set us apart from being a professional sports league. The Supreme Court didn't care. Matter of fact, they didn't like that. They ruled in favor of Alston. Justice Brett Kavanaugh said, nowhere else in America can businesses get away with agreeing not to pay their workers a fair market rate on the theory that their product is defined by not paying their workers. Say what you will about Brett Kavanaugh, but in this case, he got their ass. Now, this court case didn't necessarily legalize NIL deals, but it made it pretty clear that the Supreme Court was on the side of the athlete. There's also the California Fair Pay to Play Act in 2019. So college athletes in California were allowed to be paid to play sports, giving California schools a major advantage. Another factor is the conferences themselves were threatening to leave the NCAA. SEC football and Big Ten football sort of being the ones forcing it. They were growing their conferences and they already had TV network deals outside the NCAA. They also had the college football playoff, which exists outside the NCAA as well. The NCAA needed to start accommodating these conferences and the players themselves, or they were just going to become irrelevant. If you think, hey, the NCAA had a good run, they made a lot of money off the backs of unpaid athletes, gravy trains can only last so long. Well, not really, because the NCAA had another lawsuit filed against them, which was settled with $20 million being back paid to athletes from 2016 who played in the NCAA before NIL deals. Now, let's talk about the now defunct G League Ignite team. If you don't know what the G League Ignite team was, it's a professional basketball team that competed in the G League starting in 2020. But unlike all the other G League teams, it featured players that were too young to enter the NBA. Basically, it gave kids under 18 an alternative to going to college and playing basketball there, so these kids could get paid before they entered the NBA. The NBA was smart because they saw a gap in the market. They saw players like LaMelo going to Australia and playing the NBL, or Emmanuel Mudiay playing in China, or the OG Brandon Jennings, who was committed to going to the University of Arizona, but then decided to go to Italy and play in the EuroLeague so he can make some money. The NBA saw these guys leaving and said, hey, we can do that here. We can provide the same option in the USA. We already own another basketball league. Let's just have them play in that. And it worked. There are a lot of G League Ignite players playing in the NBA right now. Jalen Green, Ron Holland, Jonathan Kuminga, Dyson Daniels, a lot of lottery picks who are having success in the NBA. But the NBA decided to get rid of the G League Ignite. The reason being, it served its purpose to give prospective NBA players a place to make money before they enter the league. And once name, image, likeness deals were allowed in the NCAA, players didn't need the option of the G League Ignite team anymore. Players are now getting double and triple the amount that the G League Ignite players were ever getting. So the G League Ignite is now defunct, but by no means is it a failure. Now, have you taken a look at any of the NBA mock drafts lately? Then you probably noticed that most of the recruits are from NCAA schools. There are only 2 prospects that are projected to go in the first round that aren't from the NCAA. Let's compare that to last year when there were 8 players that were a part of either American sports leagues or international leagues. Some of those players were from the Overtime Elite League. This was a league that was started in Atlanta, Georgia as an alternative to going to college and playing basketball. Very similar to the G League Ignite, they were paying players and giving them perks to play. Players like Alex Sarr and the Thompson twins have come out of the Overtime Elite League. There were also a lot of international players in last year's draft. Matter of fact, the last 2 drafts, the #1 overall pick came from the French League. But this year in the draft, all those international league players and the Overtime Elite League players are now playing in the NCAA because there's way more money there. The Overtime Elite League now only really has high school players. They're playing in that league not to be recruited into the NBA, but to be recruited to a D1 college team. Take a guy like Amari Evans. He's in high school now, but next year he's going to the University of Tennessee, where I'm sure he is getting a bag. Then on the international side, let's take a guy like Kasparas Jakiciunas. I think that's how you say it. He was playing for FC Barcelona, one of the best teams in Europe. Probably also one of the highest paying professional teams outside the NBA. But still, still Kasparis came over to play college basketball against, I'm sure, worse competition than what he was playing against in Europe, so he could make more money. So the NCAA is now just the second biggest professional basketball league in the world, which is fine, I guess. The workers win, the NCAA wins, the free market wins, everybody's rich. But the romance of college basketball that your grandpa probably knew and loved it's gone. All right, thank you for being here. Leave a comment. I reply to all the comments. Leave a suggestion. I might do it. A lot of people have really good suggestions, but they're too difficult. Like, I don't really know how to get that information. But if I can, I will do a suggestion. Like the video if you can. People like the video. Channel's growing. I really appreciate it. Be good to your mammies. Eat a corn dog. I think that's all I say.